the number one mistake I see among first-time nonfiction authors, whether that's memoir, business books, self-help, or some other genre, is that new authors often fail to think about their book as a business. That means they're not thinking about how to maximize their ROI. They're not thinking about whether those professional editing, writing, and publishing services are more than just an expense, but an investment. And they're not thinking about how to give their book the longevity it needs so that it not only reaches the people they want to talk to, but continues to do so for years after it's published. Well, if this sounds familiar to you, today's episode is a must watch. We are talking about maximizing the ROI on your professional book editing, writing, and publishing services. So stay tuned. I'm going to cover the top 5 ways to maximize your ROI in 2024. If you're ready to get your story out in the world, but you've just been waiting as you're not sure whether the budget's gonna fit or the timeline or the support, I get it. Every author is different, every book is different, and that is why in December we are rolling out 3 different tiers of service. You are not gonna wanna miss this announcement when we open to the general public, and if you wanna be the first to hear, head to the link in the show notes, take the book strategy quiz. Once you do that, you're gonna get a ton of helpful information now, and you're gonna be the first to hear when we make these new tiers of service available. I can't wait, and I can't wait to hear about your book. It can be so hard to pull the trigger on all of the professional services you need for your book if you don't know how you're gonna earn that money back. But the good news is, if you approach the process of writing and publishing your book as though you are investing in a new business, because in effect you are, you will have a much better chance of maximizing your ROI, not only getting a full return on your investment, but continuing to bring in profits year after year after year. So before we get into the top 5 ways to maximize your book's ROI in 2024, I want to go into a little bit of the psychology that I see that stops authors from doing what they need to do. If you don't understand the things that are going to stop you from maximizing your ROI, none of these tips are going to help you much at all. So let's talk about why this is such a problem among new authors. A lot of the issues come down to the very basic things that I talk about all the time on this channel. One, that we don't necessarily feel that we are the experts that we are. It feels really difficult to step up to the plate and say that we have something that needs to be shared. The other piece of this, though, is that when we start thinking about the dollars and cents of publishing, so many new authors just feel overwhelmed. We feel like we don't understand the world that we're entering into. We don't know what this industry is. All of it's kind of hush-hush and closed door, and if we're being honest, a little bit snobby. So it's really hard to accurately make any kind of a plan for getting your book out. Well, I want that to stop today, because here is what I think is behind a lot of that thinking. When we think about book sales, we're often thinking about one-off individual sales, right? How many individual people are going to purchase this book and read it? That is the wrong way to look at this problem, friends, because in the reality for nonfiction authors, most of your proceeds are not even going to come from book sales at all. Now, sure, you may get some sponsored sales where a big group is going to buy bulk of your book, distribute it to whoever their audience is. Or you may get some bulk sales yourself where you're going to sell a big glut of books to one organization that's going to distribute them however they please. But for the most part, in 2024 and for the past probably 20, 30 years, most nonfiction authors who make a substantial return on their investment do so not through book sales, but through the additional appearances, services sold, consulting jobs gotten, and raises and promotions. So that's the first thing I want you to keep in mind. We are going to talk about ways to get your book out to the readers that I know you want to help. But while you're doing that, think about how you can be strategic about that, how each book sold can be not just one book sold, but lead to some larger return for you. It makes your job so much easier. It makes things feel often so much more comfortable, and it's going to be much, much, much more efficient. So what are my top 5 tips? Before we get there, a caveat. All of these tips are going to require you to have reviews. There are two types of reviews, and it's good to have both. The first type are professional or industry reviews. So these are the type of reviews that you're going to see from organizations like Kirkus Reviews for self-published authors. These are reviews that would be in the New York Times, USA Today. They also are the type of reviews that you're going to see on blogs around the web. So particularly if we think about, say, a self-help parenting book, we might see reviews of that on Scary Mommy or other kind of blogs that are really popular among parents. The same is true for really any genre, right? So maybe if we're writing a business book or a leadership memoir, which is what we love to do at Page and Podium, we maybe are going to aim for Forbes Women or Forbes. We're going to look at these entrepreneurial places because that's who we want to reach. So those industry reviews I'm going to talk about in my tips. They're really great. But the thing you're going to need to get those industry reviews are point of purchase reviews, sometimes called POP or POP reviews. Now, when we talk about POP reviews, we are talking not about professional reviewers, but about the actual readers who are reading your book. So these are the reviews. If we go to Amazon and scroll all the way down, we're going to see customers who have written reviews. If we go to Goodreads, same thing. We're going to see all of those reviews that actual readers have written. You don't even necessarily need to have full reviews. Stars can be helpful too. But the more we have our actual readers weighing in to say, yes, this book was valuable to me, the better off we're going to be. Now, before you go call your mom and your Aunt Nancy and your Uncle Bill, we do want to make sure that these point of purchase reviews are coming from your actual readers. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, I don't know about you. I know if my mom left me a review on a book on Amazon, it probably would just be about how generally great I am. She is not in my target audience, sadly, so she is not going to be able to speak to the particular things I wanted to get across in that book. But the second and arguably bigger reason that we want to be targeting our actual readers rather than just our friends and family is that Amazon has a long history of pulling reviews that they suspect are from your friends and family. And in this day and age where anyone can look at our Facebook page or our LinkedIn and see all the people we're connected to, it can be kind of dicey to try to skirt this rule by getting people on there who, are really not actually readers. They're just people that owed you a favor or who love you so very much. So once we've got those reviews, particularly our point of purchase reviews, what we want to do then is move on to our top 5. So strap in, because we're going to talk about panel appearances, giveaway campaigns, review campaigns, podcast and blog, guesting, and number 1, my very, very favorite, using your book as a funnel. So let's start with number 5, panel appearances. Now there's a reason I wanted to list this in the top marketing ROI strategies for books in 2024, and that is that since the pandemic, what I have seen is so much more flexibility in how authors are able to participate in conferences. So it used to be you would need to fly to a conference, you would need to, if you were speaking there, you would need to either pay your own fare or negotiate with the organizers to get that all the travel expenses covered. You're going to have to be there. Well, the pandemic did a lot of things, and it didn't necessarily wipe out conferences in person. There still are plenty of those, right? But one of the things that I have seen is that a lot of conferences went virtual in 2020. They tried in 2021, 2022 to kind of dip their toe back into coming in person. But for many of these conferences, attendees really wanted a virtual option. So now we're seeing a lot of conferences, and these are writers' conferences and business conferences, subject area conferences if you're a subject area expert, parenting conferences. All of these are tending to have both a virtual and an in-person component. That is great for authors. Whether you are self-publishing or you get a traditional book deal, you are likely to have to front the expense for any travel you're going to make to promote the book. I know, it's a bummer. A lot of folks think if we get a big book deal, the press is going to fly us all over the country. Unfortunately, it's just not true. And this is where virtual conferences come into play. One of the simplest ways to get your idea in front of the readers you want to reach is by giving a panel discussion. There's a few reasons that I suggest focusing on panels over keynotes, particularly if you are new to speaking or a new author. The first is, it's just easier to get on a panel. There are more people on panels. Often there's, 3 or 4. Sometimes I've seen up to 7 or 8. There's more spots. It's a little bit less competitive. But the second reason is that panels are not only easier to get on, they're also easier to perform in. So if you are somebody who has done a little bit of public speaking, but you haven't really stepped out onto the big stage that you want to hit quite yet, panels are a great way to bridge that gap. You'll find that you can pitch these larger organizations that have huge, huge crowds of thousands of people, and your odds of getting that spot on a panel are going to be so much higher, and you are going to have lots of breaks in talking. So that means that you can be thinking about what are those top 3 to 5 things you really want to get across to your audience. And you don't have to necessarily move from one point to the next to the next. You can be thinking as other panelists are talking about how it's going to be most organic and natural to get those points into the conversation. What I find is this is easier for first-time authors, and it also creates a real sense of relationship. You're up on that stage, you're interacting, I hope you're having a good time. So you're laughing and joking with other panelists. It's just going to make you seem much more confident, and that's going to make you feel much more confident. Once you've got some panel talks under your belt, virtual or online, you can transition into pitching some of these keynotes and the larger talks that you want to make. But starting with panels can be a really great way for first-time authors to dip their toe into the water of public speaking. Now, as exciting as these panel appearances can be, and I think they're very exciting, they can also be a little bit overwhelming. We're certainly not going to aim for more than maybe 2 a month, right? So in the meantime, we also want to be continuing to get that review engine running. And one of the best ways to do this, even before your book is out, is to think about doing a giveaway campaign. And that is my number 4 tip for you today. So when we talk about a giveaway campaign, all we're talking about is putting up some copies of your book on either could be like a radio show if you want to go a little bit more traditional, all the way to social media, and Goodreads is the most common place that I see this happen. All you're going to do is choose the number of books you want to give away, anywhere from 10 to 50 or however many you want to do, and you enter the giveaway campaign. People are going to enter to get a free copy, and then you can encourage them to leave you a review. Now, of course, this is not necessarily an immediate ROI, right? Because we're giving books away for free. But the key is in thinking about your investment as a business. And the thing we still know, even in 2024, is that the best way to sell books is word of mouth. So if we can think about every one of those books that we give away, not only as a potential reviewer, but also as someone who may tell their friends and family about it, who may even share the book, that is going to spread the word on your book so much more quickly. We eventually start building this exponential growth so that we are getting that book into many, many people's hands. And we can make that happen initially, right when we launch our book. But the best thing about this strategy is that by getting that book into a lot of hands, we're also setting ourselves up for exponential growth down the road. That is absolutely what you want. Even though a lot of times industry folks think of business books and leadership books as having a 6-month shelf life, I don't personally agree with that. And the best way to make sure that we are following in the footsteps of some of these authors whose nonfiction books have been around for decades is to make sure we're getting that book into people's hands. So we're not going to be stingy. We're going to give away some copies and use that to build our momentum. All right, my number 3 tip follows right on the footsteps of our giveaway campaign, and that is a review campaign. Now, I know what you're thinking. A giveaway campaign is essentially a review campaign, right? Well, yes and no. Remember how at the beginning of the video, I talked about 2 types of reviews. We have the industry reviews and we have the POP reviews. When we're talking about a review campaign, I'm talking about the other type of reviews. The industry reviews, the professional reviews, the reviewers that have a lot of credibility with your reader. So if you can get them to talk about your book, you are in such great shape. And that is exactly what a review campaign is. With a review campaign, what we're going to do is we're going to narrow in on our audience, who we're trying to reach, and then we're going to look at who is talking to them. So in other words, ask yourself, who does my audience respect so much that they will take their word when they recommend something? Because that's really who you want to recommend your book, right? So now we're going to compile a list. We're going to look at bloggers. We're going to look at the kind of bigger news websites, things like this can be anything from Forbes, I mentioned earlier, to Slate, to Scary Mommy. One of these websites that really has good traffic and that has good traffic from your reader. And in 2024, of course, we cannot forget about Book Talk. Now, typically when we think about Book Talk, we're thinking about fiction genres. So these are usually things like romance or fantasy are the types of books that have done the best on Book Talk historically. I'm not necessarily thinking about that type of Book Talk though. In 2024 and really back to 2022 or 3, we have seen that there are influencers on TikTok, on Instagram, who are really open to partnering with authors and other business people to get the word out about their product, your book. So what we're going to do is we're going to add our TikTokers, our influencers on social media, our Facebook people, our LinkedIn people. We're going to add those to our list of the people who are speaking to our audience. Then we're going to start pitching. Remember, when you pitch, you want to think about not what you want, which is, of course, to sell a lot of books. You want to think about what do they want, which is to keep their audience happy, engaged, commenting, etc. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to take the helpful stuff in our nonfiction book and we're going to use that as part of our pitch. These are the kinds of things that they can talk about. And if they read and review your book, then they're going to be able to share all of this great insight with their audience with the added benefit of having the credibility of a published book. That's going to be not 100% in, of course. You may have something like a 10 or 20% response rate. But if we can get enough where we can get a good handful of these reviews going, you're going to find that, again, this is going to be that exponential growth. You're pitching one person, but you're selling many, many books. Okay, we are on to our last 2 strategies for 2024. And number 2 is guest where your reader is. So when we talk about guesting, in this case, I mean guesting on things like an Instagram Live, guesting on a podcast, or guesting on a blog. And when I say blog, by the way, I mean anything, again, from just blogs that are very, very niche, that are maybe don't have a huge following, but it's your exact people, all the way up to blogs that have real name recognition at this point in time. Now, what are we going to pitch? Well, we're probably going to pitch one of 3 things. We might pitch an interview. This can be great with a live, an Instagram Live or a Facebook Live situation, or with a podcast. In this case, we're likely going to have to present some kind of a media kit. This is fairly simple to put together. You can find templates on Canva, or when we work with authors, we always include this as part of our services. And that is going to give them some ideas of the questions that they might want to ask you. That keeps it so short and sweet and simple and easy for them. And that's really what we want to go for, right? I'm so easy to interview. I come with my own set of questions. So that's when we think about interviews. That can be a great way to do that. We can also think about pitching a takeover. Now, this is going to be a little bit more difficult unless you have somebody that can vouch for you as a professional, good human. But sometimes you can score these. And this would be where you would just do an episode of that person's podcast or do an episode of that person's YouTube. You can, sometimes we can do a takeover for a newsletter, certainly for a blog. That would just be called a guest post, right? Whatever way we choose to go, what we're trying to do here is get in front of that person's audience in the way that is easiest to them. And if they can trust you to do a takeover, that is undeniably the easiest way to get where we're trying to go. So often when I am pitching for an interview, I will also mention that if they don't feel like an interview is going to be the right fit, well, turns out I have a ready-to-go blog post from my book. And I also would be happy to provide a written interview transcript that they could just go ahead and post on their blog. In this case, of course, you're putting in the questions as though they are the one that asked them, but you're going to do the heavy lifting and the labor of putting together this transcript or interview blog post. So the key to this guesting experience is that you are trying to take all the heavy lifting that you can off of that host. That's going to make it so much easier to get that slot, and they are going to love you for it. Okay, the moment you have all been waiting for. My number one ROI strategy for 2024 is to treat your book as the start of your sales funnel. Now, when I say sales funnel, if you're not an entrepreneur or a business person, a lot of times people are really intimidated by that language. But all we mean by sales funnel is that someone is going to buy your book, and that is the entrance into your business. Now, they have invested in your book and they got a book, so they know you can be trusted to deliver. If they read it, they're building a lot of know, like, and trust with you so that they are going to feel that you're much more approachable. They're going to know what you have in common. And 3, you are just getting in front of them. By doing some of these other strategies I've been through, hopefully you've got a lot of books out there wandering around. Those are people who know your name. And the thing about a book, unlike a business card, is nobody throws away books. Sometimes we donate them, sometimes we put them in a little free library, but we usually don't put them in our recycle bin. That means even if that person's not ready to buy from you, whatever your service is right then, they've got your name there on their bookshelf. They're going to think of you whenever they are ready to invest. And that's all we mean by sales funnel, is we're using that book not as a book, but as a way for people to come into your business, where then they're going to be comfortable investing in your larger ticket offers. Now, the reason that I saved this for number 1 is that truly this is the easiest way to get your ROI. If we think about selling one-off books, you are probably not making more than maybe $20 at the top on a book after you have done the printing and the marketing, and that doesn't even include all of the work that you put into writing it. So if we think about trying to add up to whatever your goal revenue is, your 6 figures, 7 figures, you're going to have to sell a lot of individual books for each of those $10 to $20 investments to add up to the goal that you want to hit. On the other hand, if you can get enough books out there that you end up with 10 or 15 or 20 new clients, you've probably already hit your goal, right? And you didn't even have to worry about selling millions and millions of books up front. Now you've got a book circulating that got you a bunch of new clients, and I promise it's going to continue to bring you new clients just by being out there in the world. All right, so those are my top 5. Now, I want to acknowledge that you may be feeling just as intimidated and overwhelmed as you were when you started, but I do hope you have a little bit more knowledge. So I want to talk about how do we set this up as an actual plan. And there are a couple of suggestions that I want to make. One is think about whether it's going to make sense to hire someone to do some of this pitching for you. It can be a little bit expensive, but if you can swing it to get the budget for a publicist or a podcast pitching or a guest post pitching service, that can really, really help you maximize your earlier spend on your book. You also may want to think about a full service coach. So Page and Podium offers this, that we will coach you through your book as well as these marketing strategies. If you're feeling like you want to do a little DIY, you just want some support, that may be the way to go. And then last of all, I do have a free resource for you, and this is a brand new resource. So you can download our free guide to maximizing the ROI on your book at pageandpodium.com/ROI. I hope you're going to check it out, and I also hope you'll stay tuned because I'm about to share some of the amazing offers that we have starting in 2024. So stay tuned, and I'll talk to y'all soon. I am on a mission to make sure that everyone has access to the support and tools that they need to tell their story and tell their story well. And that is why I am so excited to roll out 2 brand new offers that are going to fit so much more comfortably into a whole range of budgets. Now, the first one I can't share with you quite yet, but if you are looking for a community of support and skills and tips and all of the things you need to move your memoir forward, keep an eye on this channel. But the one I want to tell you about today is the Change Maker package. This is a brand new package we're offering that is going to give you all of that ghostwriting, all of that editing support that you want, all of the help to get your story on the page, even if you're just not a writer. So that package is only available to our newsletter subscribers right now, but if you want to be the first to hear when we open it to the general public, I hope you'll head over to the link in our show notes and take the book strategy quiz today. That's going to help make sure that you get all of the information you need about what the path your book should be on and how to sign up to have us help you get it out into the world. I know that you are ready for this and you deserve to have your story out there. So sign up for that quiz right now. The link is in the show notes and I can't wait to hear about your story.